What is one big mindset shift you think that young professionals need to make or need to go through as part of their almost rite of passage when thinking about operations as a career?
I think operations is a great career for problem solvers. And in terms of a rite of passage or something that anybody I'd recommend doing is just find something that's super distressed and fix it. There's a great line from the movie Fight Club that says, "How much do you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight?"
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Ambition Circuit. Today, I'm with my guest, Mr. Nick Gebhart. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Gebhart. And if you could please give a brief overview of yourself to our listeners so they kind of recognize you better.
Yeah, hey, nice to meet you. Again, my name is Nick Gebhart. I am currently supply chain leader at Veolia Corporation, our analytical instruments division here based in Boulder, Colorado. Career operations leader in manufacturing, supply chain, distribution, 25 years of experience, mostly in the medical device and life sciences industries.
Cool. So, that kind of segues into my first question. Since you've talked about leading supply chain and manufacturing operations through both, growth stages and crisis stages across different industries, what is one big mindset shift you think that young professionals need to make or need to go through as part of their almost rite of passage when thinking about operations as a career?
Yeah, I mean, I think operations is a great career for problem solvers. And in terms of a rite of passage or something that anybody I'd recommend doing is just find something that's super distressed and fix it. There's a great line from the movie Fight Club that says, "How much do you really know about yourself if you've never been in a fight?" And I always like to bring that out in presentations because, quite honestly, you do learn quite a bit about yourself as you're going through a fix it, or you're taking something that's super distressed and getting it fixed. Teaches you a lot about yourself, teaches you about what you're good at, what you're not good at, teaches you about the people you want to be around as you go through the process of turning something around.
Nice. So I know that at CONMED and other places you've worked, you've helped dramatically reduce back orders and raw material inventory, especially in times during the pandemic. And so, what was your approach to solving high pressure, high stakes problems like that, especially in a setting in the medical device company during the pandemic?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, in the medical device industry, especially, there's a patient on the table with every single shipment, right? Sometimes operations people tend to get really bogged down in Excel and spreadsheets and SKUs, and I think that orienting a team or a business around the fact that there's a customer at the end of every one of those line items is really important. So if you start there, you really got your true north identified, and you can really work backwards into the operational challenges that might be precluding you from being able to take care of customers. So you start with that. You've got to have clean data uh, to really build out your plan of attack, and then I just kind of lean on this follow up and follow through, because if you're going through a situation with back orders where you are creating pain for customers, you've got to let the sales force know, you got to let your marketing partners know, you got to let the people that are at the end of the chain know what's happening, so they can be armed with the right information to be in front of the customer. And at the end of the day, that's really what it is. It's a chain, and you've got to make sure the people that are at the end of that chain have the best information possible.
Cool. So your philosophy is finding a problem, working backwards, and looking at it that way.
Yeah, I think there's a great adage that's just say start at the customer and work backwards.
Yeah.
That applies in a lot of different cases.
Cool, cool. So, you've worked across global teams, you've worked in various companies in various roles. What's something that you think younger people from Gen Z who are entering the workforce, especially in, operations or in supply chain, overlook about how those things work at a larger scale?
I think what gets overlooked more now than it used to is just the power of the individual connections with people, and I say that in a couple ways that a lot can be solved by picking up the phone and having a conversation, or getting on a plane and going to the supplier. My broad swath take on it is that Gen Z would prefer to work off IM or prefer to work off emails. And
Yeah.
when you're interacting with generations that would prefer to solve in real time or in person, that becomes inefficient, or there's things that become lost in translation or taken out of context. So if I was giving advice to Gen Z people, I would say don't underestimate the power of personal relationships, showing up, taking that extra time to do a dinner with a supplier, do a dinner with a customer, getting to know people and kind of what makes them tick.
So how do you picture that in, or what's your advice on handling that in a global setting when you're working with international clients or international suppliers?
I mean, think that you're a little challenged. Sometimes you're working in a big company with travel or whatever, but I think really like meeting people where they are. And, sometimes that means you're on a 7 p.m. phone call with China, or you're
Yeah,
on a, 5 a.m. call with Europe, but making sure that you're available to meet people, in a time zone that works for them if you really want to get things done. And I've seen that on both ends where people, they'll just send an email to a supplier in China and they'll be like, well, they didn't email me back. It's like, well, did you try to get on the phone with them? Because at the end of the day, if you really need something to happen, you've got to try and figure out how you get to be first in line, right? And a lot of times that
yeah.
requires doing things that are outside of normal hours, or meeting people, figuratively where they are in their time zone.
So then what's your advice on navigating, cultural differences and cultural norms when you're working with international clients and suppliers?
I mean, I think my personal experience as a person that didn't have a passport until I was 26 years old, hadn't been out of the country other than some quick spring break trips to Mexico or Canada, is that
Yeah,
to get out of your comfort zone, get out, see the world a little bit. I was fortunate enough in my career to do two different international assignments, both of them in Europe, and quite honestly, it certainly broadened my perspective. I'm also from a part of the U.S. that isn't very diverse, and my first job I took was in the Bay Area, which is really diverse. And
yeah,
again, a good opportunity to kind of expand your horizon, work with people that you may not have met otherwise, get a chance to understand their background, their perspective, and that I think opens up the world for you. So when you are having those interactions, you're at least armed with some sort of, awareness of cultural
yeah.
differences.
So, you've talked about having a really long career in supply chain. And so, especially for the latter part, you must have seen a huge surge. I mean, throughout the whole thing, but especially the latter part, a huge surge in technological advancements, be that in new computing methods or even AI. And so, how do you think those things shape up supply chain?
I mean, they definitely do. I mean, I think your your opportunity is to really understand what solution is the right fit for the problem, because you can try to kill a mosquito with a cannonball in some cases. And I think that staying on top of what's changing and what solutions are available is important. I think you also got to look before you leap, and a lot of this stuff is really cool, but um, having cool stuff for the sake of having cool stuff oftentimes doesn't take care of your customers the right way.
Yeah.
So I think you really need to understand your value chain as you're assessing what tools are available, and then rolling them out in a way that is not disruptive to customers.
So, how can people who are just entering Salesforce instead of people who are already in Salesforce use AI to boost them in their career and put them ahead of the competition?
I'm not going to claim to be an expert here on, what all the available AI solutions are.
Yeah.
I think it's, using it in a way that keeps your data clean to make sure that the human intelligence is able to make good decisions is still really important. So I know there's a lot of opportunities in supply chain for efficiency, good decision making tools, but I still like, and maybe this just shows my age, and maybe it disguises my wisdom, but I think you've got to have tools that still allow you to have a human making some decisions based on data that AI can certainly harvest for you, but you've got to make sure you're using the right tools that are going to deliver for your customer.
Okay, and I think that's especially true, again, going back to your international clients, because they might not be as accustomed to AI as we are, and they might not be as comfortable even with it as we are. So I guess that is good advice that holds true.
Well, and I think you got to, figure out also what kind of industry you're in and what kind of,
Mhm.
all the different people, the links in the chain. In the orthopedics world, there's surgeons who are still, call it pretty old school. So, they still want to see somebody in person. They still
Yeah.
want that person to be prepared. They want that person to scrub in with them and, be, using the same kind of instruments that they were using, 30 years ago when they were a fellow. So again, the right tools for the right situation.
So what got you into, medical device companies in general? Because you said you've been in supply chain for quite a while. So was that something more recently or kind of throughout your whole career?
No, I started my career right out of university in medical devices. Worked for a company called Stryker, which is a large global orthopedic company, and had the good fortune that they were recruiting at the University of Idaho, where I went to school. I was
Nice.
a double major in finance and human resource management, so wasn't really that interested in operations or supply chain per se. And then I learned about the company, I learned about the role, and I guess I would say the combination of having a finance degree plus a human resources degree, you actually get to use both of those things quite a lot in operations. So
In
it ended
operations.
up being a nice fit for me. I am pre positioned for order and for things making sense. And in operations, there's a lot that you can put in order and a lot that you can make sense. There's a fair amount of things that you can't control either. But operations was a really good fit for, I'd say, my personality and my work style.
So what did you initially intend to pursue in college? And over those 4 years, how did, what guided that shift into going to operations?
I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be in business and
Mhm.
tried a couple things out during internships that frankly weren't for me. And what I was interested in is getting in with a good company, getting a situation where I could learn, grow, develop, grow a career. And so for me, I was kind of, looking at a bunch of disparate things. And the company that I ended up going to was, again, out of state. It was a totally different part of the country. It offered a lot of, I would say, just like, opportunity to go try something totally different. And that was
Mhm.
both career wise, it was both the geography. And it was different than what a lot of my friends were doing. And so I, again, moved from northern Idaho to San Jose, California, which is about as a different, there's two different places in America as you're going
As
to
you could
find.
be, yeah.
Yep.
So if you had to go back, do it all over again, maybe to your, you know, 20 to 25-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself about your career and maybe even just about life in general and why?
Well, I'd start on the career front, and I've said this for a while, and so it didn't take me 25 years to come to this conclusion. But I would tell people to consider more moves laterally, sideways, before you're worried about moving up, and that your career you'll be better at those moves above you if you do more moves laterally. And that's hard because a
Yeah.
lot of people are ambitious, and there's pressure, there's watching your peers do something, and the desire to move up is really strong, right? You want to be able to post that, like, congratulations on my new job thing on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And
on
that's
LinkedIn.
far more exciting when you've been promoted than, hey, I'm doing something laterally. But I would say that collective wisdom would say that the more lateral moves that you do, the better you're going to be when you go upwards. So if I look back at my own career, I started as a manufacturing planner. I said, you know what I should have done before I got promoted to production supervisor is I should have been a buyer, or then I should have been a senior planner, and then I should have been a senior buyer, rather
Yeah.
than being focused on moving up. Because career wise, I would have been a better manager had I made two or three more stops laterally.
Okay, so kind of develop your comfort zone and then break it and move somewhere else.
I would just say learn more about the different jobs that you'll eventually be the manager of, and you'll be a better manager. I think there's an element of when you're in your comfort zone, it probably means you're ready to try something different.
Different thing, yeah.
But again, I think a lot of people want to have a career that's like the letter I, right? It's a straight line and
Yeah,
there's a
straight
dot
line
on top.
upwards.
The reality is that most careers really aren't like that. Most careers are a loping kind of a Z where you go
Yeah.
across, you go diagonally, maybe you go down, and you can still be going up the whole way, but the difference between a Z and an I is really different. And the richness that you generate over the course of your career is really in those lateral moves because then you're better. And then ultimately you will find you probably accelerate further but you've got to build that base, earlier.
So what kind of, or how big of a role and what kind of a role do you think having like a playbook of trust and alignment plays in the supply chain world today? Or would you say it's as much as it did 30 years ago, more than it did 30 years ago? Or do you think it's been just as consistent all about?
I mean, I think both those two words are pretty, transcendent for time, right? I mean, you've got to trust, people that work for you that they're going to follow through to get things done. You have to enable an environment of trust with the people that you're telling what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
that it does happen the way that you've described. And then, the word alignment can mean a lot of things, but, in operations, it essentially means are you on the same page with your commercial partners about what's going to happen, with a sales forecast per se? Are your internal teams aligned with do I have the parts to build what I need to build to be able to meet those commitments? Are you aligned when there's a disruption about what happened, why, how you'll prevent it in the future, and then when are you actually going to be able to deliver as you'd
Yeah.
intended to? So I don't think there's any real change in those things fundamentally over time. I think what's changed is again, like talked about earlier, there's a little less personal touch when there's a problem, and people will, take a shortcut and email out a spreadsheet and hope people will interpret what the issue is. When sometimes there's a lot of really bad news baked in that spreadsheet, and if you pick up the phone and you say, "Hey, I'm going to send you a spreadsheet," you can see what the situation is for yourself, but I'm available to talk through it. And I can do that after you digest the spreadsheet, or I can do it now. That personal touch is I would say what's gotten away from the supply chain world, and the pandemic I think taught a
Yeah.
lot of lessons through that. But honestly, like trust and alignment, you can really glue those two things together with great communication.
So then if I had to make, kind of three bullet points of takeaways from our conversation today, you would say one, always keep an active role of the human mind in supply chains in terms of trust, in terms of, what kind of work you're doing, how you're implementing it. Two would be don't try to always move up vertically. Try to build a comfort zone as soon as you're ready to break it, but make sure that you're emphasizing building your comfort zone and learning about what you're doing before you leave that spot. And three would be kind of learn about the jobs you're going to be managing before you become a manager, before you become a leader, so that you understand your people that much better.
Yeah, let me try to put it a little bit more succinctly here into three bullet points. But I would say that clear communication always wins the day, right?
Yeah.
And good news or bad news, clearly communicating wins the day. Secondly, I would say for career development is that you'll be better vertically by doing more laterally to try and keep it simple. And the comfort zone thing, I would like I would say if once you're in your comfort zone, like you should be looking to break out, and it probably
Yeah.
means you're ready to move up. And then third, high level is that following through for people is how you get promoted, and how you do that and what tools you use is going to be unique to every kind of situation, but. People that get promoted, people that have a career that becomes a straight line, is that they follow through and say do ratio is really really close, and that's how you build a career, and it's how you build a network, and it's how you get different jobs over time, is that you're known for your follow through.
Nice, nice. You know what? I like that. That's very understandable. So thank you. And thank you for giving us your time. It was wonderful to have you on the show, and I truly did enjoy our conversation.
My pleasure.
Okay, and everyone, with that being said, that concludes another episode of the Ambition Circuit.